Hello and welcome to Biology 110 lecture number 1. This course is split into 5 units. The first unit deals with the criteria of life, what it means to be a scientist and what the concept of science means, and we're going to talk about some very basic chemistry. If you've had chemistry before, this will be a review for you. If you haven't, don't worry, we're not going to go so far deep into it that you're, going to be having nightmares about stoichiometry or anything like that. And then we're going to move into a little bit of biochemistry, which is really what we want before we move into talking about cells and organisms and how DNA works and that sort of thing. We need to talk about nucleic acids and proteins and carbohydrates and all of these kind of terms that you're probably somewhat familiar with, but we're going to go into detail. I want to make sure that every single one of you is able to speak intelligently about this material by the end of the semester. And one of the reasons that I want students to be able to discuss biology intelligently is because no matter what profession you get into, no matter where you go in life, biology is constantly around you at all times, and you will always get into conversations that are biology adjacent. So let's say some new medication comes out. You should be able to know how that medication works, at least in broad terms. I'm not saying everyone needs to be a pharmacologist, but you should know how drugs interact with your system, how they affect neurons, and how they interact with proteins on the surface of your cells. Maybe you want to know how those drugs are extracted, or why having a rich biodiversity of plants and animal species from which we can get new types of, say, medications might be an important thing to have. You might hear about stories where a criminal suspect was brought in on DNA evidence. Well, wouldn't it be good to know what DNA evidence is? Why is that considered the gold standard for forensic science? Why is it that no two DNA fingerprints are exactly the same? And how exactly are we going through and matching one person's DNA to another person's DNA? Or maybe you go to one of these websites, like a 23andMe or something like that, where they send you a tube to spit into, and then they check your DNA and they tell you, where your family has come from over time, what kinds of genetic influences you have, if you're predisposed to any kind of genetic conditions. Well, how accurate are those tests, and how is it that they're going about and telling you those sorts of things? So we'll talk about that kind of information this year when we get through it. Another reason why it's important to know about biology is that often public health relies on a certain degree of scientific literacy amongst the population. We need to understand why vaccines are valuable. We need to understand how bad a disease can spread if it is not contained. We need to understand where these diseases come from. Is this a bacterial disease? Is it a viral disease? Those should be treated very differently. How is it being spread? Is it being spread person to person, or is it being spread through what we call a vector, like, say, mosquitoes? So I used to use, here I have a mosquito on this slide, I used to use Zika virus as my big example of this, because the Zika virus combined so many different areas of biology that I have an interest in. So it has virology, right? Because it is a virus. But it also touches on immunology and how people's immune systems react to that virus. It deals with epidemiology and the spread of diseases. Now, those all sound kind of interrelated, and they are, but it also deals with, say, entomology, because we have to take a look at these mosquitoes and why are they carrying this virus? Why can't they carry other types of viruses? There's a lot of bloodborne viruses that mosquitoes can't carry around, but this one, it turns out that they can. It touched on ecology, because as the climate changes, as the temperature gets warmer and warmer towards the poles, these mosquitoes are actually able to spread out their territory further and further. And you get developmental biology in there as well, because mothers, pregnant mothers who carry the Zika virus, tend to have children born with disproportionately sized, smaller heads, a condition called microcephaly. So you get all kinds of interesting factors interplaying off of each other. So knowing a little bit about biology when these news items come up might be important. And of course, the obvious public health concern recently, why I'm recording all of my lectures right now anyway, the spread of the coronavirus. Right? Every single one of us should now have first-hand experience understanding what can happen when information about an emerging pandemic is not distributed efficiently, and when mixed information is being distributed to the population. Now, I don't intend to talk about coronavirus specifically too much because it is a novel virus We are still doing studies. We have some information in, but those studies have not been corroborated yet. But I will talk about viruses in general. I think it's important for us to have an understanding of what a virus is. And the last reason why I think it's important for everyone to study biology is just because we like biology. We like animals. We like plants. If you walk around my house, and I'm sure your house as well, you can find lots of plants on display, several different animals. We live with pets. In the upper right-hand corner of the slide here, I have a picture of my dog, Edward, who is, as you can see here, a very good boy. Pets make us so curious about how organisms work. I want to know everything about how Edward sees the world. I can see more colors than him. I know that that's one difference between how the two of us operate. But he also has a sense of smell that's 100 or 1,000 times more powerful than my sense of smell. So fundamentally, how we interact with the world around us is different. And I think that that's a really interesting and valuable area of knowledge to possess. So biology is important. Biology is all around us. But of course you guys know that because you're taking this class. So let's talk a little bit more about biology, the science, biology, the study of life. And of course, by law, if you're talking about science in any introductory course, you have to tell people what the Greek roots of the name of the science is, and biology is no exception here. So biology is a word that comes from two Greek roots, bios meaning life, and logos meaning reason, or the study of, right? It's the logic behind life. So biology is the study of life. Now, this gentleman that I have pictured on the slide here, his name is Jean-Baptiste Pierre-Antoine de Monet Chevalier de Lamarck. We usually just call him Lamarck, though, so you could just call him Lamarck. Typically, Lamarck is remembered by biology students as the evolutionary thinker who got the theory of evolution incorrect. He proposed a mechanism by which organisms could evolve, which later turned out to be inaccurate, and it was replaced then by Darwin's theory of evolution. And it's a shame that that's the only context that Lamarck is remembered in, because he's also the first person to have ever used the word biology in its modern sense, way back in the late 1700s. So we'll talk more about Jean-Baptiste Pierre-Antoine de Monet Chevalier de Lamarck later on in the semester when we get to the evolution section, but needless to say, the science of biology has been around for a very long time. You could argue that the science of biology has existed for as long as humans have existed. We've always been interested about other animals and about ourselves and about how living things work and what is life. And later on, we'll see that some of our earliest formal ideas about biology actually go all the way back to, say, Aristotle and those kinds of Greek philosophers. So modern biology, though, includes a wide variety of disparate fields. So biology now includes anatomy, physiology, bioinformatics, cytology, histology, biochemistry, pharmacology, biophysics, psychology, developmental biology, genetics, botany, zoology, virology, epidemiology, ecology, mycology, bacteriology, endocrinology, neurobiology, immunopathology, ethology, invertebrate zoology, entomology, parasitology, ichthyology, herpetology, ornithology, and mammalogy, and it goes on and on and on and on like that. Again, biology is kind of a wide field. So in general biology, this is what you might call a survey course. We're going to talk about lots of different areas of biology to give you a good basic understanding before later you move on to higher level biologies. This way you'll have at least a good working knowledge of how some of the most fundamental concepts in biology work. So let's get started.